Welcome to Guns, Guns, Gear, and Guns with Gary Gunderson. I am Gary Gunderson. I recently came across a video on YouTube titled The National Socialist Gun Control Myth by YouTuber Zoomer Historian. And the video's thesis is that all the memes and talking points likening American gun control policies to gun control policies of Hitler are incorrect. That, in fact, Hitler propagated gun ownership in Germany during his rule, so the opposite is true. Hitler supported firearm ownership. I'm going to break down why he is wrong. To give him full credit, the video does build a solid foundation going over gun control in Germany following the Great War, but I feel like he had decided on his conclusion ahead of time and worked backwards from that, as the creator ignores and discounts many of the details mentioned in his own video. To summarize, guns were severely restricted after the First World War in Germany due to impositions placed on the country via the Treaty of Versailles. According to an article in the treaty, all civilian usage of firearms and any civilian instruction of their use was banned. Hunters and police were restricted to only using pistols, among other restrictions. In order to follow this article, the Weimar Republic enacted gun control laws with harsh penalties for possession of firearms. In 1928, still the Weimar Republic, restrictions on firearms were relaxed, but with a strict firearm permit, licensing, and registration system, including annual registration reports to the government. Part of this law stated that only those people whose trustworthiness were not in question and can show a need for a gun permit were allowed to get these permits and possess firearms. If you can see where this is going, congratulations, you don't have a weirdly naive view of governmental power when it comes to the Nazis. Things did change when the Nazis rose to power, which Zoomer Historian points out.
When the party came to power, the previous laws were actually enforced against Germany's Jewish community for the first time. Jews were found to have been disproportionately and essentially openly flouting Germany's gun laws. As of 1935, no new permits were given to any Jews in Germany, as they were deemed to be untrustworthy foreigners.
In 1938, the Nazis passed their own gun law, lowering the purchasing age, easing restrictions on rifles and shotguns, and removing other restrictions for party members and government workers. Then, after an assassination of a German official in Paris, they passed new regulations.
As per these new regulations, the Jews were banned from owning any type of weapons, including bladed weapons.
With this information, part of which I've shown you he presents in his own video, he reaches this conclusion.
The German gun control talking point is complete nonsense. The Germans had enjoyed great freedoms in this regard up until the Treaty of Versailles. Hitler effectively abolished these restrictions entirely for party members, which was millions upon millions of Germans. One could only state that Hitler rearmed the Germans, but disarmed foreigners in Germany.
Zoomer Historian likens the disarmament of Jews, homosexuals, and those the government deems to be untrustworthy as equal to an American gun law that would disarm newly arrived immigrants.
Such a law wouldn't look out of place in modern-day America if soon-to-be President Trump were to disarm newly arrived immigrants and reduce gun control measures for the American people themselves.
What an odd thing to say.
A few points. The Second Amendment is not derived from government, so absolutists can and have argued in favor of firearms rights for immigrants, even saying that the Second Amendment is only for American citizens. These are entirely different categories. This only works if you ascribe to the same race-based view of Hitler. German Jews were still native-born Germans. Homosexuals were native-born Germans. Germans the Nazi Party found untrustworthy because they were political opponents or did not believe in the party line were native-born Germans. A more apt analogy would be if Trump disarmed anyone who is not a member of the Republican Party. It's like the very idea that government, even a Nazi one, would abuse the law and authority is unfathomable. Government is not your friend. And guess what? The Nazi government used the gun registration system that was in place under the Weimar Republic to disarm political opponents and anyone else deemed to be untrustworthy when they took power. Sure, they may have made it easier to own guns for people on their own side, but that means disarming everyone else. A major argument against gun control is that you don't give government too much power, because all power is enforced via the threat of violence, and that violence can be turned on you. The conclusion that Hitler did not support gun control because he only disarmed his opponents is not the feather in the cap you think it is. Yes, he wanted his people, his group, to have more power, which is why they had firearms and everyone else didn't. Which is why not seeing an issue with restricting firearms to only those the government approves, especially when it's something as fungible as trustworthiness, is hilariously stupid. I haven't seen any other videos by Zoomer Historian. I think ultimately he did not look at this issue objectively. And I'm sure he would say the same thing about me, but he could have added nuance to the debate, like bringing up how the argument is reductive. And the argument originated in American politics, comparing Nazi Germany to U.S. gun control debate due to the influence of the 1938 Nazi Germany gun law on the 1968 Gun Control Act debate. A lot of American gun control has served as a mechanism to disarm certain groups of people. This evolved into the argument that if Jews had not been disarmed, they would not so easily have been rounded up into death camps. That further has evolved into shorthand as disarmament equals Nazi. You could say that's reductive, but I think the argument still remains. Or he could have put focus on the memed quote attributed to Hitler, "To conquer a nation, first disarm its citizens." Now, there's no concrete evidence he ever said that. But according to the book Hitler's Table Talk, 1941 to 1944, Secret Conversations, he did say, "The most foolish mistake we could possibly make would be to allow the subjugated races to possess arms. History shows that all conquerors who have allowed their subjugated races to carry arms have prepared their own downfall by so doing. Indeed, I would go so far as to say that the supply of arms to the underdogs is a sine qua non for the overthrow of any sovereignty. So let's not have any native militia or native police." To me, that is more referring to conquered territories than his own people, but with a race-based mindset that could also be extrapolated to anyone he deemed undesirable, and obviously applied to Jews, Gypsies, and others who were German, which was reflected in Nazi policies we have already discussed. Maybe I'm naive, because I wasn't aware until making this video that this talking point is a big point of contention with gun control advocates. And some of them do make the same points as Zoomer Historian, that Hitler was actually pro-gun, though they also take a different, ridiculous approach to make their point as well. One of the main criticisms to this talking point is that civilian ownership of firearms is unrealistic as a check on tyranny, which is an interesting approach for an American country that was founded on a revolution, and it also does not assert that gun control isn't tyrannical, just you can't do anything about it, so shrug your shoulders, I guess. Likewise, an article from PolitiFact says disarming the Jews didn't help facilitate the Holocaust because their population was small anyways, so it wouldn't have made a difference. Okay, so 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust. If half of them were armed, that's an army of 3 million, even disorganized and spread out in smaller communities. That wouldn't help resist their death? One author wrote in her book, in fact, Jews were not well armed and were not able to adequately defend themselves against Nazi aggression. Thus, reimagining a past which they were and did does not provide a legitimate basis for arguments about what might have followed. So, you can't even argue that things may have been different if people had guns, because it didn't happen. Wow, that's an unassailable theory. Anyways, that's the end of the video. I could go into more detail, but I think I've made the point I wanted to. What do you think of the Nazi gun control myth, or the myth of the Nazi gun control myth? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you see other new videos come out like this, or about gun control or gun control debates, send them my way, as I may not have seen it and would maybe make a video about it. If you've made it to the end of the video, please consider supporting me via Patreon, liking the video, sharing it, and subscribing to the channel to help it grow. Thanks for watching.